being an astronaut when you were actually a kid?
Yeah, I think a lot of us did have dreams of being an astronaut when we were a kid. Like when I was your age, I loved drawing pictures of airplanes and reading books about space, and that was one of my interests. And I didn't think it was really a possibility until I got older, but I did work really hard in school, especially in science and math, and tried to get as best grades as I could. And then as I got older, I realized, okay, well, I ought to try to take this seriously. And so I took the jobs that I thought would prepare me, and I applied a couple times, and the first time I didn't get accepted. And that happens a lot when you're trying for a really high goal, is that sometimes you just don't, it doesn't work out the first time. So the important thing is to keep trying and trying again. So at your age, the best thing is to work really hard in school, because that's going to prepare you for any kind of career, and maybe you'll get to fly in space too. Thanks.
I noticed that young man from Bristol who keeps having his, he has his hand up. Can we take a question from there, or?
What's the food like in space?
What's the food like in space?
Okay, I'm just going to repeat that to make sure I understand it. Did you ask what is the food like in space?
Yes.
All right, I think everybody has their own opinion of the food in space. And first, let me caveat, I'll give you my opinion, but I'm probably a bad judge because I spent 26 years in the Navy, and I like Navy food, so my standards are pretty low. The food we have in space is not unlike meals ready to eat, some of them. Thermostabilized packages of food that are very good. Gone are the days where we would squeeze our food out of a toothpaste tube. We have wonderful things like seafood gumbo and crawfish etouffee and chicken fiesta. I mean, we have wonderful dishes. And they're the thermostabilized ones. We also have rehydratable foods. We like rehydratable foods because they're lightweight to carry into space, and we add water. And the interesting thing about the space shuttle is it made its own water inside a fuel cell. And we liked to make our water and then use our water, and as a byproduct of that, we got electricity out of our fuel cell, so it was a really nice system. So we used a lot of rehydratable food too, and that was not unlike some of the containers you might see where you squeeze some water in and you just let it sit for a while, and it actually comes to life again, and it's really good food. And then we have some traditional fresh food that you might have, not a whole lot, like apples or crackers, or peanut butter is a very favorite food in space. And I call it the ultimate food glue, because peanut butter is good because things float away. And when food floats away, that's bad. But peanut butter keeps everything in one place so you can pop it in your mouth. So peanut butter is the perfect space food. Thank you.
What was your favorite thing about being in space?
It's a really hard question because there's so many different things. Floating and flying around in the modules in the space station is an unbelievable amount of fun. The other thing is looking out the window, because you can go around the Earth in 90 minutes. You can see the whole Earth in 90 minutes. So it's just amazing. And you know, the daytime views going over to the United States, trying to pick out where you were from or where you live now, and then the nighttime seeing thunderstorms and southern lights, just incredible. So there's a lot of things that are great about flying in space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ever going to the moon again?
Well, I sure hope we are. I think that'll be one of the destinations. Our next program is twofold. There's two ways we're going. Number one is to get to low Earth orbit. The space station is close to the Earth. You know, the moon is far away from Earth. So our second program is to do more exploration, to get beyond the Earth, and to go places like the moon, an asteroid, or Mars. Now the question is, where do you go first? And so as we build this new rocket, we're going to be able to go to any of those locations over time. It just takes time. The hardest one is to go to Mars. It's the farthest away, and there's a lot of challenges to go to Mars. But other ones, like maybe an asteroid, or maybe going back to the moon to try out your new system. But I'm sure we'll end up back there someday. I'm just not sure what order we'll go there in.
One of the interesting things, and that's okay, you can go and sit down. One of the interesting things about the space station is that we have systems on there that are doing things like recycling our air and our water that are fairly new technology. I mean, who would have thought 5 years ago that we'd be willing to take all of the liquid aboard the space station that we produce as waste, whether it's urine or condensate from an air conditioner, and reuse that and drink it. But that's really what you have to do when you go on these long trips, because water is extremely difficult to get to space, not to mention it's very heavy. And we're perfecting these kind of systems on the International Space Station, because when we go to Mars someday, or we go to a destination that's far away, the water recycler, the air recycler is going to have to work, because if it doesn't work, the astronauts will die. So we want these systems to be high quality and redundant. And these are the kind of great things that we're doing in orbit on the space station today.
I was wondering a detail about your mission concerning who is going to actually land the last spacecraft that really has wings. So did you go up to Doug and say, well, you're the pilot, but I'm the commander, so I'm going to do it?
No, we never even had that discussion. No, it's generally the left-seater that will land. The commander, who's the left-seater, and the pilot will back him up. But like any airliner, we always carry some form of redundancy just in case. And you know, the interesting thing is, I'll let you in a little secret. When we were up on the space station, I got kind of conked in the eye by a bungee cord of all things. It just kind of sprung loose and it hit me in the eye, and I was fine. You know, I had a little scratch and there was a little bit of blood, which is another whole story, how blood flows in space. But you know, I think that both Doug and I were thinking at that moment, gosh, you know, here's the guy who's supposed to land the space shuttle, and he almost hurt his eye. What would they do? And you look back, we've never had the pilot land, but the pilot is just as trained as the commander. And if there ever was an opportunity or a reason for the pilot, the right-seater, to land, he's every bit as qualified, and I'm sure Doug would have done an absolutely fantastic job. A lot of people probably wonder if Doug didn't have a bungee in his hand before my eye got hurt. But we have redundancy, just like we do in a lot of systems in space, just in case.
How plausible is it that we can build another space station on top of the moon?
On the surface of the moon, or
Yes,
in orbit around the moon?
On the moon.
Well, that's one of the things that's being debated, of course. If we go back to the moon, do we go back to the moon just to do technology demonstration and development? For example, one thing we don't have to deal with these systems that Chris was talking about we're testing on space station is the dust. You know, they had a problem with that during the Apollo, is all of the dust on the moon. It's very fine. It got into the spacesuits. It can get into small crevices and be a problem. So do we go back to the moon and we just do technology development and make sure we understand the environment before we go further? Or do we establish a base there, which is, I think, what you're talking about, and actually put people there and live there? In the previous program, the Constellation program, the plan was to actually go there and establish a base there and build up a wealth of experience living in an environment like that. And now that's a little bit more under debate. So I really don't know what we're going to do. It's funny, some people have this attitude that, oh, we've been to the moon, we don't need to go back there again. But we really just barely scratched the surface of what the moon is and our understanding of it. So I think there are things we could certainly learn if we went there. But I don't know if we will or not. We'll have to see. I think we'll go at least to do technology demonstration, though. Thank you.
Question from me.
Hi, I'm Tay on Twitter, and thank you, Sandy, for responding back on this visit here. My question is, what are you all's your goals when you're finished here? Are you going to teach, perhaps, or are you going to continue working on your astronaut careers?
Well, you know, we're still trying to figure that out. We landed on July 21st, and really since then we have been busy doing this kind of work because it's important to talk to people about our experiences and share our experiences. And we have about another month of this, and then we sort of go back into normal life mode. And I think at that point we'll start, having a chance to think about what comes next. A few of us have the opportunity to fly again on a long duration mission if we so choose. And I don't think we have the answer to that question yet.
You consider teaching?
Oh, thank you.
I think Sandy's probably considered it. I've considered it. I would enjoy teaching and giving back a little bit. It's the question of, have you given everything you can to the space program, and are you ready to go do that yet?
Yeah.
A question about reentry. I was just curious, when you're re-entering, and I've seen movies of the heat that's generated on the heat shields and everything, do you all still, in the floor of the aircraft, have a sense of heat coming through it. If you could describe that. And then my second question, if I could, will you all be continuing a tour? I mean, I was just passing through town, and my daughter would love to have participated in something like this. I was curious if you're going to be continuing with a tour. Thank you.
Yeah, for reentry, the night before, we cold soak the orbiter. So we try to get it as cold as we can, and that wasn't a big thrill for Sandy and I, since we're the ones that always wear long sleeve shirts on orbit to start with. So you got to kind of get dressed up for winter vacation there when you go to bed the night before entry. And so that helps with the avionics and all the, the black boxes. Do you really feel it get warmer in the orbiter during reentry? No. The difference, this was my second flight, and the difference with this flight compared to my first is we re-entered at night, almost the whole way. We got a little bit of dawn just before we came down to land on the East Coast, but it was pretty much predominantly a night entry, and it was incredible, the plasma that we saw, and you saw a little bit of that in the video, but it was unbelievable until we got down to 100, 150,000 feet, and it was one of those things where it's kind of like flying through clouds. We were flying through this pink-orange plasma, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and then you could see the coast of Florida, and we came in for entry. So you do get a sense that you are literally a meteorite re-entering, and there's a lot of heat outside, upwards of 3,000 degrees on parts of the orbiter, but it doesn't really get warm there until you're back on the ground in Florida and the vehicle's been sitting there a while, and then you start to feel a little warmer, although it wasn't anything. But I think it's because we cold soak, that really helps the internal temperature of the vehicle when we're coming back in. And then the other part of your question was, are we going to continue this tour? Yes. As Sandy said, we've got about another month or so, and then there'll probably be individual hometown type events after that we'll go to as well. So yeah, we have a few more weeks to go. Thank you.
One of the things we do is we get out and touch the orbiter after landing, and it's still warm. Kind of neat. Good thing it's not warm inside, but it's warm outside.
Do you want to go to England one more time?
Let's let this young lady. Okay. I think we're.
What's the moon like?
What's the moon like? It's dusty. Dusty. Actually, well, here we'll talk just a little bit about the moon. Its gravity is about 1/6 of that on Earth. So if you weigh 60 pounds on Earth, you'll weigh about 10 pounds on the moon, which is kind of a neat effect. It allows you to bounce across the surface. The surface is very dusty, and that is one thing you heard Sandy talk about. We have to contend with is that fine dust that seems to get into a lot of machinery. But we think that we know there's a lot of ice crystals on the moon, and perhaps some unique elements that we don't find very easily here on Earth. And they may provide an interesting source of material that we could use to make rocket fuel. So the moon has a lot of potential. It's an interesting environment, and the nice thing is it's right next door. It's only 250,000 miles away, which is pretty close in a galactic sense. I think, was that time for our last question? Yeah, okay. We're going to wrap it up. Okay. I would like to thank everybody for coming out and listening to our story. As I said, this is one of the great foundations for cultivating the interest in young men and women, and for us older folks who have had an opportunity perhaps to fly some of these vehicles. It's really special to be here. Thank you very much on behalf of the crew, and enjoy the rest of your day here at the Air and Space Museum.